Earth, Wind & Fire obviously wrote a ton of incredible music, and I wanted to take a look at one of those things today because it is an incredible use of key changes and the circle of fifths. And that song we're gonna take a look at is After the Love Has Gone. If you know it, chances are you probably love it because it is an incredible song. And it's a great representation of the actual real-world usage of the circle of fifths almost to a systematic degree.
For a while, to love was all we could do. We were young and we knew in our eyes.
So the song starts just fairly normally. It's really beautiful chord progression here. We're using this one chord to the minor 4 chord, even though we still have that F in the bass. Now we enter sort of like the pre-hook. Now this is a really interesting key change because we're actually moving down a half step. Previously, the key center was F. You know, even through the pre-hook there. So that whole beginning of the song, we're in the key of F major, and all of a sudden, now we're in the key of E, which is a step down, but for some reason, now tell me if you feel differently about this, let me know in the comments, but I feel like it's kind of an elevation in sort of, I don't know if mood is the right word, but the vibe kind of like takes a step up, like, ooh, we're starting to go somewhere, which is kind of ironic because we just moved down a half step in key center. We went from F to E. Now, I think that E naturally has a brighter sound than the key of F, if that makes any sense. So certain keys just seem to be brighter than others, and certain keys seem to be darker. So we've moved into the key of E. And one thing I want you to notice is how did we get there? Literally the only thing we did is we threw a 5 in front of the E. Now, if you remember back to the Celebrities Singing Imagine video, I had to try to figure out, okay, how am I gonna chase these people around because they're in a billion different keys? And the way we wound up doing that is, okay, every time we wanna change key, all we have to do is throw a 5 in front of the new key, and it'll magically make sense to our ears.
No need for greed and hunger. Brotherhood of man.
If we had just gone, it wouldn't have made as much sense. It doesn't set your ear up enough to really understand where we are the second we drop into the key of E. But when we throw that 5 of E in front of it, which in this case is B, and we're using a B sus chord here as a 5 chord, that B really helps set up the E, and that makes it just make a little more sense to our ears. So it's a really, really handy device that when you're writing anything, if you want to change even to a weird key, if you put a 5 in front of that new key, it's gonna make a lot more sense than if you just dropped into that key without any warning.
And yesterday was all we had.
And boom, we're totally have moved away from that into the next key. Let's check that out. And it does it in a super brilliant way because we're sitting on B major 7, and we have the 3rd is the melody. But watch what happens when we change key. We've now shifted our chord to the C minor 7, but we've kept that E flat as our melody note. So with the previous chord, it would be D sharp technically, and then once we move to C minor 7, it's now E flat. Same note, well, how does that, oh boy, here we go. Is it the same pitch, different note? I believe is that it? Same pitch, different note. Confusing music theory stuff that doesn't really matter that much. So now we've changed key again, and this is where our circle of fifths comes in really handy, because watch this. we're just going right around the circle. And we follow it for quite a ways too before we deviate away from it. And we only deviate away from it to march ourselves back up to the starting point so we can do it again. Let's just talk very quickly about what the circle of fifths is. The circle of fifths at its most basic explanation is just an organization of all the different keys in such a way that we place keys next to each other that are most similar. Now visually, if you're looking at this on a circle, what will stick out to you is that depending on which direction around the circle you go, you're either adding one flat each time you change key, or you're adding one sharp if you go the other direction. There's a couple different ways to play this, but in short, the circle of fifths just refers to a sequence of perfect fifths. It would sound like this. Then we run out of room. What if we go the other way? As we start on C and go down a perfect fifth. Now, if we take that same note sequence, but go the other direction on the keyboard, okay, so what I mean by that is we started on C and we went down to F, which is the perfect fifth down. Another fifth would be B flat. Another fifth would be E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, B, and so on and so forth. If we take that same sequence of notes and flip it and go the other direction, C, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, B, and so on and so forth again, you can see that instead of perfect fifths, we now have perfect fourths. Now, I was confused when I was younger because the circle of fifths was described to me as up 4, down 5. Up 4, down 5. Now, you can see how describing it as fourths when it's the circle of fifths, it'd be a little confusing. But hopefully this kind of makes it clearer how if we go from C to F, that might look like a fourth if we're going up, but it would be a fifth for going down. So they're kind of interchangeable in that way. This up 4, down 5 motion is really important because, as you're about to see, it literally is how we build a 2-5-1. And 2-5-1s, as you know, are one of the most common devices in music. So we start illustrating this kind of bizarre but yet very important interconnectivity of all these different musical concepts. A 2-5-1 is simply moving in one direction around the key circle. We're only going 3 steps because that's all we need to get from 2 to 5 to 1. But if we keep going in that pattern, we'll go right around the circle of fifths in one direction or the other. Utilizing the circle of fifths creates some really, really interesting harmonic motion, as well as harmonic motion that it just inherently makes sense to us because it is the organization of closely related keys. Okay, now that was a quick rundown of the circle of fifths so that we can apply what we now know to looking at Earth, Wind, and Fire, because boy did they use it. I particularly love that little chord sequence too because it's unexpected and ultimately it does throw us back to where we started. However, you're kind of, when you hear those particular chords, you almost expect it to go. But instead, we do that same thing that we did with the common tone melody note before. We do the same thing with the B flat now. Check it out. It was going to be we still would have expected that melody note to be, in this case, A sharp, but instead we turn it into. We're still using that note, B flat, but the chord is totally different. And the key center is totally different. Letting your ear develop an expectation and then throwing it off by introducing a totally different sound, what an effective tool that is. It makes you go, oh, as you're listening to it, because it just sounds so cool. And again, the tool of putting a 5 in front of any key you want to go to, that's exactly what we do there. We're trying to get back to the overall, where we started the tune in F. So now we're landing on this G flat. So how are we going to get from this to that? Well, let's just put a 5 in front of it. And all of a sudden it makes sense. We do that hook again, and then back into the chorus again, and then we go into what's ultimately going to be the ending section. There's this ascending pattern. Oh my God, just check it out. Oh my God, all right. We finish the phrase in the original key. We go to do our climb up that we've been doing throughout the whole song to get us back to the beginning of that chorus section. Right? That's what we normally do. But this time, we're going to keep going because we're going to completely change key altogether. That is exactly the same chord progression as we were doing before, with even the same couple of chords walking up to start it over again. The same exact thing, just in a different key. And in this particular case, we've actually moved up a 4th. Remember, the first chord of the chorus in the last key was C minor 7. Now, it's F minor 7. So even that movement of our key change follows the circle of fifths. So this whole tune is really just a masterclass in how to use the circle of fifths to create really interesting yet super grounded and understandable harmony that goes in very unusual directions. I mean, so much of their stuff is just incredible, but what a harmony masterclass. This is one of my favorite things of theirs by far. But let me know in the comments below, what is your favorite Earth, Wind & Fire song? What do you love about this composition? What have you learned from this composition? I'm curious to know your thoughts in the comments down below. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.